Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to NASCSP ROMA Next Generation Kickoff for State Offices, State Associations, and RPICs. I'm Jovita, your moderator. Today's webinar on ROMA Next Generation will be presented by Jenae Bjelland, Executive Director of NASCSP, Jennie Chaffin, Director of the Office of Community Services, Denise Harlow, CEO of the Community Action Partnership, and Barbara Mooney, Director of the Association of Nationally Certified ROMA Trainers. Before we begin, I'd like to go over a few housekeeping items. All attendees are on mute. If you have questions during the webinar, you can ask questions using the chat option on the webinar toolbar. The toolbar is located on the right-hand side of your screen. There, you'll see a text box where you can type a question for all panelists. Questions will be read aloud and answered during the Q&A portions of the webinar. Please identify the topic, the panelist, and the slide number that your question is related to. Finally, in order to keep to our schedule, if we don't have time for all questions, we will compile your questions into an FAQ following the webinar. The webinars will be recorded and will be posted to the NASCSP website. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Jennie.
Thank you, Jovita. The launch of ROMA Next Generation marks a critical milestone in our movement's efforts to strengthen CSBG. Since 2012, we've successfully launched organizational standards and are now in the first year of implementation of those standards. We've moved forward with establishing state and federal accountability measures, including robust surveys of customer satisfaction at both OCS and state offices. And now with this initial feedback period for ROMA Next Generation, all of these efforts are coming together. They're all in pursuit of doing our very best for people with low income and those living in struggling communities. The challenges we face today demand significantly larger impacts on the lives of those we serve. Our changing world requires more dynamic approaches and innovation. And with ROMA Next Generation, we seek to move from not just reporting, but learning and improving. For many, these challenges will be a stretch, but I believe our network is strong, and in true community action fashion, we can get to new places together. We need everyone in this network engaged and thinking deeply about ROMA Next Generation. Together, we will craft a product that works well for everyone. And today, we're going to engage leaders in this network and how to really think and make sure that we hear from everyone in this initial feedback period. I want to thank NASCSP and the Community Action Partnership for all their work and the work of our ROMA Next Generation work group that you'll hear more about later. And I'm really excited, all of us here at OCS are really excited with this kickoff. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Jenae.
Good afternoon, everyone. We are really excited that we were able to post all of the documents for the ROMA Next Generation work. There is a lot of information that we have posted. That's why we decided to have this webinar specifically for state CSBG offices, associations, and RPICs to help us message. People are so eager that we also welcome the community action agencies and others who have joined us to this call. Today's call, we're going to really review what your role is and how you can help us get the messaging out there. That we have been trying to send as many messages as possible. OCS sent out a Dear Colleague, the partnership has been sending out listservs. We at NASCSP have been as well, and we've been keeping our eye on the click-throughs, and they're not as high as we would like, so we need your help in getting the message out. So today we'll talk about how you can do that. And then we're also going to be reviewing the key elements of the ROMA Next Generation components. I do want to point out that this webinar, we are reviewing the forms and not the Word documents because we think that those are more complex than the Word documents, but that there are two different versions that are posted. Each document has been posted to the NASCSP website, which you can access through our button, through our comment period, and through the CSBG tab as well. We have posted a component guide that has helped, that was created to help you review through all of these documents, talks about what each component is, how it relates to the old CSBGIS, and then it will have a PDF of each of the documents, the webinar, and then a frequently asked questions for each of them. We're also working on a survey tool. We will be posting that on Friday. We're hard at work trying to ensure that the survey tool has been crafted to garner the best feedback from all of you. So we're looking forward to that. And then, as Jeannie mentioned, we will be going through a series of webinars to really talk about this whole process to the whole network. That's going to be rolling out over the next couple of weeks. So the clearance process, what can you do? The first level that we have is this initial comment period, and it is March 3rd through April 1st. This initial comment period is to familiarize yourself with all of the different components, to have those individualized feedback at the local agency levels, at your state and regional conversations, and to really give us your comments on what you like about what we've changed. Tell us what you think about the theory of change, provide individual information on the outcomes and the measures that we've created, and to give us as much robust feedback as possible so that NASCSP can then work with OCS on modifying the forms and instructions so that we can then go through the 60-day OMB comment period. That's projected to happen through June through July. And then after that, we have the 30-day OMB comment period. At that time, we're not expecting any comments or very limited comments because we'll have worked through it with all of you. And we're hoping that that happens September through October. The big push is to ensure that this gets through this administration and not the next administration. So this clearance process is really critical that we get your feedback, that you take the time to go through the documents. We are here to support you. We want you at the state offices, state associations, and RPICs to have your own dialogues. Call us if you need any help. NASCSP staff can help. And that we will use this to refine the documents and forms. We're not going to be able to make all the changes that we receive, but we will make as many as we can. So the survey logistics, we have decided that we are going to break these into 5 different parts. We have a high-level survey, which is Survey 1, and that's going to be reviewing the national theory of change and the national goals, and we'll go over that next. Then we have a survey, which is the second survey, discussing all the community work, individuals and families, CSBG expenditures, and CAP leverage resources. And then we have a high-level survey, which is putting it all together. So today we're really focusing on all of the components. When we get to putting it all together, we really do need to talk about how this is a different process instead of just reporting, like we do with the CSBGIS, and really using the data to do analysis, performance management, and understanding what your impacts are at the community, individual, and family level. So what you can do at your state office, messaging. We are happy for you to forward our messages that NASCSP sends to all of your local agencies. We hope that you really work with your state associations and your RPICs to talk about how this affects you at the local level. At the state offices, it's important for you to review the timelines. That these timelines, we've given you projected timelines on when you'll start collecting this information. We ask that if you have created your data systems or you work with vendors, that you let them know as well, that this data review is for everybody that's going to be affected. So look at your timelines for review for data systems and implementation. And then some really great strategies are working with your state associations. If the state association has a board meeting or an in-person meeting scheduled during this time, or a webinar, that you work together and you message what this is all about. I'm going to turn it over to Denise to talk about state associations.
Thanks, Jenae. The state associations and as well as the RPICs have a real purpose and a real ability right now to help leverage the power of the state association. You are a key leverage point for communication and information dissemination, and we need you right now. As you heard earlier, we've been sending a lot of e-newses out over the last 48, 72 hours on this information, and we are keeping a close eye on the click-throughs. And that's, as many of you know, that's kind of how you can tell how many people are actually clicking on things and reading things rather than just opening the generic email. And we really need your help to get the information out. So as Jenae said, please forward our e-newses to your members. If you have an executive director meeting upcoming, a board meeting, please distribute. Please encourage your local agencies to get engaged, to think about it, to listen to the recordings if they can't be on the webinars live, and to really get engaged in the process. You are going to have a unique perspective of state associations, certainly how this might play within your state, and how you as the state association may use the information as we go through here today's presentation. Specifically around the RPICs and the RPICs, this is certainly a design to help amplify and maximize the power of state associations through the regionalization model. I know there are a lot of regional calls going on. Please encourage to have a ROMA Next Generation agenda item on each of your regional calls during the time of the comment period, and not just the next 30 days. I think this is something that associations and RPICs can really be talking about for the next few months. Many of you have conferences, whether it's state association conferences or regional conferences. No matter if that's within the next 30 days, 60 or 90, I encourage you to make sure you have ROMA Next Gen sessions as part of your conference, making sure that maybe there's time for some small group dialogue, some small table conversations. I think there's a lot of different ways that you can help share the information and engage people in the conversation. And I encourage you to reach out to NASCSP. Jenae, I know, is on and engaged in this process and wants to work very closely with all of you, as does the partnership. Please feel free to reach out to us as well if we can be helpful.
We have developed a survey so that you can, if you have a statewide meeting or a regional meeting and you want to consolidate your comments, the surveys are formulated so you can identify who you are, what region you're representing, and how many local agencies you're representing. This will help us streamline our comments. We have also been asked from some states. Iowa is working with their state association, and they're going to have NASCSP on the call. They're bringing everybody together, and they're talking about how this impacts them and what their comment periods are going to be. And we'll be there on the call to answer any questions and answers. Nevada is another one that we're going to be working with to do this.
So I really want to emphasize to all of you on the phone, all the state offices, the state associations and RPICs, that you really have a leadership assignment this spring. And Denise is exactly right. We don't want this just to be the next 30 days. We have another 60 days and another 30-day comment. And so all your events over the spring, hopefully you can add ROMA Next Generation to the agenda. But we have successfully launched the organizational standards, and it was a success because this network engaged at all levels, and we got deep, rich comments, and it made the organizational standards strong. And that's exactly what we want to have happen with ROMA Next Generation. We want to engage people deeply at all levels. Our best thinking is out in the field. The field will know what in here works and what doesn't work, and we really need comments. And so you as leaders have really got to get people to focus their attention on this, because we know folks are really busy. You know, they're implementing a lot of programs, getting their needs assessment, getting strategic planning, getting the org standards addressed, and so they're going to need a little nudge. So we really want all of our leaders to help make this real. The other thing I would just say is that, you know, call on NASCSP, call on CAP, call on OCS. If you've got a conference or a statewide or regional meeting and you haven't asked us to come, ask OCS to come. There's many of us in the office, and we'll figure out a way for one of us to be there during this really critical period. So if you've got something that you've not yet said, OCS, can you come and attend the meeting? Please let us know. Thanks.
In addition to the surveys, something that we will be posting this week is that we are working with Barbara Mooney to help us develop discussion guides that will walk you through how to have these conversations, and they will match the survey tools as well. So there will be a discussion guide on the theory of change, on the community level work, the individuals and families, tying it all together. So those will be posted, and they're just really useful tools for you on questions that may be relevant and may not be, but we wanted to be able to provide you as much information as possible. So let's get into the meat and potatoes of this webinar. I'm going to turn it over to Denise to talk about the National Theory of Change.
Great, thank you. The theory of change. This is something I know that's been in conversations for quite a while, and we are very excited to have it out for comment. You'll see here that the survey, the high-level survey on the theory of change, will be out shortly. This is a high-level survey, so again, the theory of change is going to have interesting practicality for associations, states, and associations, as well as local CAPs. I think everyone will be using it a little bit differently, so keep an eye out for this high-level survey. Up on the website, you can download a much larger copy of this theory of change than what's on your screen right now. But I think one of the things to highlight, and we'll kind of walk through the structure of it, the top layer of the theory of change are the national goals. And you'll see here that we've gone from 6 national goals to a proposed 3 national goals. So I encourage you to take a look of how that looks, how that feels, how does that resonate with you. You'll see here that we move to the services and strategies. We thought it was important to identify a subset that certainly isn't all-encompassing, but it's a range of the often typical programs and services that community action agencies provide in the field. You'll see on the left-hand side the community action core principles. A good theory of change really talks about your beliefs about what makes your structure different and unique and impactful compared to other theories. So this particular section is an element that really tries to call out some of those core beliefs that we have in the community action network, whether we work at the local, state, or national levels. We hope that each of these bullets are things that we can rally behind. On the right-hand side, you'll see information that's very similar to slides that you see frequently from us that talk about the performance management system, the organizational standards, the state and federal accountability measures, and certainly how the national performance indicators and such fit into how we manage our performance in community action. And the all-important, I think, foundation, you'll see it's even here in a brick format, is really that strength of a national infrastructure. One of the things that does make community action unique is that we have 1,000 CAP agencies serving 96% of America's counties. We have an infrastructure of state associations and regional RPICs. We have key partnerships with state offices that connect us with governor's offices and such, and then certainly our federal partners. So again, building from the bottom up, we have our infrastructure organizations. We have our beliefs as a network. We document how we show our results, as well as how well we document how well we perform, the types of services, moving up, again, to what we actually achieve in terms of our broad outcomes and long-term goals as the network. We hope that you take a look at this. Does it resonate? What doesn't resonate? What have we gotten right? What have we kind of missed out on? Nothing is ever perfect, but we can't let the perfect be the enemy of the good in a lot of ways. So again, this is a theory of change, and it will be used differently at all the local levels. So take a look at it, see how your agency or association or state office fits into it, and we're going to be issuing the survey, and please, we hope that you respond. And I think the next slide actually shows the 3 national goals, so we can show you what the 3 national goals are. Individuals and families with low incomes are stable and achieve economic security. Communities where people with low incomes live are healthy and offer economic opportunity. And people with low incomes are engaged and active in building opportunities in their communities. I hope you see here that we've certainly focused on individuals and families. We focus on also community, and you'll see this as we go through today's presentation, a real amplified message on the impact we have at the community level. And the third, but I think probably one of the most important pieces that makes us different, is our maximum feasible participation. And we're not walking away from that. We still have this as a key national goal, that people with low incomes are truly engaged and active in building opportunities in their communities. So with that, we're going to turn it over to Barbara to move us to the next section.
Thanks, Denise, and I'm going to carry on with discussing community-level efforts. We're going to talk about goals 2 and 3 a little bit, but first you'll see that the second survey that we're asking for a response to is the one that's on community-level work. And I'll walk through some of the key elements of this that are going to be discussed in the survey so that you're able to answer appropriately. But the 3 documents that you want to make sure you have looked at before you do the survey are the strategies list, the national performance indicators, and the efforts in progress tool that are all referencing community level work. So what is the community level strategy list? That's the first document. This is new, brand new to our performance management system. It covers the domain areas that you'll see repeated throughout the performance measurement and management process. We've got employment, education, cognitive development, infrastructure and asset building, housing development, health and social or behavioral development, community support services, emergency management, and civic engagement and community involvement. So as you look at this list of strategies, you can see that we're using the term strategy at the community level, and you'll hear us talk later about services at the family and individual level. But at this level, we're thinking, what are the things that community action agencies do alone or with others or in special relationships that would impact assessed needs in one of these areas. Well, here's an example of strategies that might be utilized for employment resources. There might be minimum or living wage campaigns in your community. You might be involved in job creation initiatives or EITC campaigns. You see, these are big picture ideas as to what the agency might be engaged in. So this is just a sample for one of the areas, and you'll see other at the end. There's an other category for each of the domain areas. We're hoping to gather more information from the field as we roll this out about the kinds of strategies that are employed at the community level. How will these be reported? Well, I'm going to show you a series of reports, and keep these colors in mind because you'll see these throughout the reporting process. The purple level that you're seeing on the screen now is the national level. This is the information that would be available with an aggregation of the reports that have rolled up to the national level. This is a snapshot of employment strategies in which you see at the extreme right side of the page the number of agencies that reported on these strategies. So 32 agencies had reported that they were engaged in minimum or living wage campaigns. That will get that. Then we can also know that represents 28 states, and the number of strategies that were implemented was 40. In the next level, you'll see the green level. This is the state aggregation. So this is what the state would look at. It would see the number of agencies reporting and the number of strategies that were reported as being delivered by those agencies. So you can see the relationship between the total number that reported on any kind of employment strategies at the top of the page, and then the number that the total number in the state. At the local level, you'll be filling in the blue portions of these forms, in which you'll be saying you'll be projecting and talking about the number, reporting on the number of strategies that you have engaged in. So that's an example of what the reporting forms look like. So those are the strategies. So what happens as a result of the strategies? What are our outcomes? The new national performance indicators at the community level really are designed to tell the story of the community level impact of community service block grant. There's a common set of measures that track the performance of the network with respect to the impact that those strategies we looked at might have at the community level. The MPIs collect data as usual, as you will know, on all of the agencies' community activities, not just those that are funded by CSBG, because we know that's how community action does its work. The data will really help both the agencies and the states analyze what is working. And that's really what's behind a lot of this performance management. What's working and what steps can we take to improve intervention? There's a set of assumptions that we have to be sure are clear. So this is one of the things that you want to be sure to look at and respond to in the survey. community is something that's going to be defined locally. This could be a school district, that's the community we're going to work on. It could be a neighborhood, that's our community. And so you set the parameters on what it is that you're defining as the community. And we know that community level work takes time, so you'll see coming up a community level efforts in progress tool that allows agencies to talk about their interim progress before they actually get to that big NPI reported outcome. The agencies are only reporting on the indicators that they are working towards. This is not, you're not reporting on everything. This is a menu. You're picking out those things that you'll report on. And again, as in strategies, there's an other opportunity. Part of what we want the community measures to do is to help us capture the scope or the scale of the impact or the intervention. So if we're working with one employer, that might add a new job facility that hires 100 people. So that shows the scope of the impact of the intervention. We want to make sure that the 4 health clinics aren't closed, and that serves about 1,000 people. This is not just one, as we're currently showing them, one initiative or opportunity, but that this is really about a larger number. And this will show movement on this larger community level. Again, the report forms are the same color codes that we've seen, the purple at the national level, where we're seeing the total number of jobs that were projected to be created was 1,567. The actual was 1,540. And 50 of the states reported on that outcome. And you'll see at the extreme right that what the definitions were of the communities, cities, neighborhoods, or county. On the state level, the green form, you're looking at the number of agencies, again, the targets, the same information, but this just focuses on each specific state. And the blue form will be the agency level reporting. And you can see, and this is where the designation of the community in that second column is a baseline indicating where we're starting, that there are about 200 jobs right now, and we want to increase that by 50. Our actual result was increasing it by 56. And so this is the raw data at that level that will get included in the report form. And so this is the form. The next slide is the form that I mentioned, this progress form. We really know that this takes time to develop, and so we know we need some process measures, some progress measures that link the activities to long-term impact. And so this is an example of how we will start to ask these questions. And these will be questions asked of everyone. The first question being, does your agency do community level work, a yes or a no? And then so the agencies would answer that question. If no, they have an opportunity to say why they don't do it, and if yes, they can talk about how they do the community level work. Is it independently, working in partnership, or working in a collective impact initiative? And all of these terms and so on will be gone into in greater depth as we move forward with the specific webinar next week about community level. Oh, and then here is an example of what the community level progress might look like. On the next slide, you'll see that you can say whether it's an independent initiative, whether it's in partnership or so on. There'll be drop downs. This is the domain, the infrastructure and assets, and then a measure that you're ultimately looking for, the number of safe and affordable whatever. So there'll be an opportunity for you to pick an NPI that you're working towards ultimately.
Barbara, I do want to point out that we have posted this in a PDF form and an Excel form. This is a version of the Excel form where this one we do have it unlocked, so you can see that if you pick housing, that the next level down is a drop-down box that matches all of the indicators for housing. And so we've been thoughtful about that. And then the rainbow colored tabs below, those are for if you do any kind of employment collective impact, education collective impact, et cetera. So the PDF shows all of the forms, but the Excel, you can go in and see the additional information and how it could possibly work.
Great, thank you. Thanks a lot. That's helpful. So you need to look at both the Excel spreadsheet and the PDF to get a better sense of what this efforts in progress report form might look like.
Barbara, I'm going to just also say that if you have questions, to send them to all panelists or host and presenter, that the only data entry forms would be really at the local level, that the green and the purple, the state and the national level, are the rolled-up version of what is being reported locally. And that we did catch that one data entry error where you can't have 32 states reporting with only 28 agencies. So we caught that and we corrected that, and we'll update that on the form.
Okay. Let's move to goal 3, which is the civic involvement and civic engagement and community involvement goal, or domain area. And this really is about how the community can be engaged and how the participants might also be involved. And just like the other domains, this can be this is both a family level outcome, which we'll talk about later, but it can also be a community level outcome. But it also has the additional opportunity of being the basis of the third goal. So when you're talking about community or civic engagement and community involvement, you're really looking at all 3 of the national goals. So let's just look at the community level version of it. So the gains that are being tracked at the community, by the community level indicators, are these big changes that would be involved with the community. And this means that we have to look at who is being involved, who is involved in this process. They could be partners, funders, policymakers, volunteers, board members, business representatives, or other community individuals, regardless of their income. So this is the civic engagement. This is the community involvement at any level. And as we look at how we might measure those, we're going to be looking at if you can go forward, the number of community members who are working together with the Community Action Agency to improve conditions in the community. And so the things that will be tracked are the number of people who donate time to support those community action efforts that will improve efforts in the community. And then a subset that talks about those who participate in specifically public hearings, policy forums, or other advisory boards. And then there's also going to be an other here so that we can capture community members that are working towards a specific collective impact initiative or partnership. And I think it's time now to turn it over to the next person on family indicators, and that would be Jenae.
That would be me. So our next grouping that we have are the individuals and family level efforts. So we will have a survey that we're calling Survey 3 for this, and the survey is going to focus on not just the outcomes, but also the demographics and characteristics, the brand new services list, and then we have the national performance indicators, and recommendation or seeking input on individual and family stability indicator options. So first we're going to go over the demographics and characteristics. The demographics and characteristics tool, we have 2 different tools. We have a baseline report that we're putting together, and this is to get information at the point of intake. And we know that we are going to have to work through on what this really means for everybody, so we need your help. That currently the Section G that we get from states and local agencies, we know that that's run usually at the time that the report's due, so we're not able to get a really good understanding of what the individual and family demographic and characteristics are when they first come to our local agencies. So we're putting together this baseline report. All of our reports are also unduplicated, so you're going to need to have unduplicated counts. We still allow for you to tell us one or more characteristics were obtained. So we're not saying that you have to have all of the totals match the total number of individuals and households that you're collecting information on. And we also know that there are instances where you can't collect information, where it's difficult to collect. So you would be collecting this demographic and characteristics information where it makes sense. The baseline characteristics report, as I said, I do want to reiterate this because this is really important. This is at the first time that they engage with a local community action agency. And this is really important for us to be able to tell the story of what our individuals and families look like when they come to us before they start to receive services. What's their level of need? And then the next report that we have is the all characteristics report. And this is kind of like a snapshot on all the individuals and households that receive services at the end of your program year. So this is everybody that received a service during that time, whether they were new or whether they were continuing. And this really helps us get an understanding on all of the really amazing work that local community action agencies are doing and the number of individuals and families that they're touching. The proposed reports that we have, how we've structured this is that at the top of each of our reports, we do have brief definitions on what this report is about. We talk about when we project to collect this information. We've hyperlinked it because we know that at states, you all have different reporting cycles, whether you're July through June, October through September, or calendar year. So we wanted to be able to provide that. I do want to make it very clear that this is an end report. And so this isn't how local agencies would ask the questions on their intake forms, but how your systems, however you collect this, would generate the report into these. Because we know that for age, you would most likely ask for birth dates instead of the age ranges. So the only difference between the baseline and the proposed is the timing and when the information is being collected. All the other information stays the same. We have updated some of the categories, and we've added some new ranges and data points, and so that is something that we will watch your input on. When we did this, what we did is that we did a really thorough research on what are the intake forms and what are the other demographics and characteristics that are being required by other funding sources that are most likely to be received by local agencies. And we wanted to ensure that we matched up with that as well as the census information as well. Next, we'll talk about the proposed services list. This is a brand new thing. You've been hearing us talk about ROMA Next Generation. It's about connecting the people to the services to the outcomes. And we had been missing a big component, which was this services list, that in many cases we had services mixed in with our outcomes, our national performance indicators. So we removed any outputs from the national performance indicators, and any kind of service counts are now here. We have been talking about what this really looks like, and the work group, I have to really thank the ROMA work group for helping us work through this, because we were discussing how to actually count all of this. And where we landed is that we wanted to ensure that we reported on the unduplicated number of individuals receiving the services, not the unduplicated number of services provided. So let's give some examples. You'll see that there's a common thread through all of these reports. The domains, we have tried to stay as close as possible. We do have a domain here about supportive services, and these are services that the agency provides that could really impact multiple domains like transportation, some health domains, etc. Otherwise, we have all the same domains. On example, employment example, what you'll see is that we have apprenticeships and internships, and underneath that we have youth summer work placements. We have developed this list knowing that this is not going to be all-encompassing of everything that you do. We know that there are service lists out there. There are 311 components that have thousands and thousands of services. We really wanted to get to the high-level stories. So how we're going to collect this, we'll again go walk through the forms. The first form, this is the aggregate of the national information. We'll be able to list the total number of states reporting on employment services and then the total number of agencies reporting. And then underneath that, we'll be able to show how many unduplicated individuals received youth summer work placement. So in this case, we had 1,512 individuals receiving youth summer work placement. Of that, 31 states reported this as a service provided, and of that, 234 agencies were providing this. At the state level, you'll see that we'll ask for the total agencies in that state reporting on employment services, and then we also ask for the total agencies in that state because we wanted to see the ratio of how many agencies are selecting services out of the whole state. And then we ask for the unduplicated number of individuals receiving those services and how many agencies report. And then at the local level, it's very basic. It's the agency reporting. And then we did really want to stress that these are all individuals. So we have that column in there just to reinforce these are not types of services, but the number of individuals receiving these services. So in this agency, we had 14 unduplicated individuals receiving youth summer work placement. So now moving on, we'll talk about our updated national performance indicators for individuals and families. We really want to be able to, again, talk about the whole range and that this isn't just about reporting on what happened, but doing that analysis on what are those connections between the people who come to receive services that they receive, and then the outcomes that they're able to generate. So this, we went through all of our national ROMA goals to figure out what was the best way to talk about this and what were the indicators that we really wanted to measure. Our indicators are developed to show what change happened and how much change happened, so the percentage of change in the number. We did significantly revise the NPIs, so we now have 27 indicators, plus we have a stability measure that's proposed for everybody to review and to vote on. And that we've organized these individuals and family indicators by the domains again. So they are under the national goals, but instead of splitting them out over all of the goals, we wanted to be able to do some better categorization under domains. So we'll quickly talk about what this would look like. Our employment example for here, we have job attainment, the number of percent of unemployed individuals, and we have different levels of this. We have who obtained employment up to living wage. We have became self-employed as a result of community action agency services up to living wage. Then we have maintained existing employment for 90 days and maintained employment for up to, or for at least 180 days. We were very thoughtful on the day count that we have here. We wanted to ensure that, again, we matched up what others were reporting. We know that in WIOA that they go much higher. And so we wanted to ensure that we could get something that showed what community action agencies were doing and would work within the system of when they could touch back with their individuals as well. So the reporting forms, again, color scheme, purple is the national aggregated information. You'll have the number of states reporting, how many total agencies reported outcomes in this domain. So we have 869 agencies reporting outcomes for employment. We have our first level is the number of states reporting outcomes. We have the target number of how many targeted jobs are going to be obtained. We have the actual results. Then we have the number of agencies reporting the outcomes. We have the number of agencies who met their performance target, and then we have the percentage of agencies who met their performance target. At the state level, it just goes down to how many local agencies reported, what their targets were, what their actual results are, how many agencies reported their outcomes, how many met their targets, and how many, the percentage of targets. Now, anything that's in dark green, so this last column of the percentage of agencies who met performance targets, those are going to be auto-calculated. So you only have to fill in the information, and it will be automatically generated for the percentage. And then at the local level, we do ask for the number of participants served in programs, and then of those, how many are expected to achieve the outcome within the reporting period, and then how many actually did achieve. And then we talk about the percentage who achieved as to those who started, and then your planning accuracy. Because part of what CSBG is all about is that the local agencies know what their performance targeting should be, and you know what your success rate is. And so that's why we've kept these forms in there. Next, I'm going to go to the stability measure option. I'm going to turn it over to Jeannie.
Thanks, Jenae. So I see we have some really good questions coming in on the Q&A, and I really do encourage folks As we're covering items to type in a question, we're doing really well on time. So I think we'll be able to have some really nice time at the end to answer some of these questions. But it helps us to manage the questions if you can just go ahead and send them in as you think of them and as the question arises. So I'm going to talk about another piece that's new to the family level change effort. So with our NPIs on family, we try to get at measuring change at the family level or the individual level. And there was really a desire among folks who were working on ROMA Next Generation to reflect in one of the indicators something around the number of people, number of individuals that we help achieve stability. We feel like a lot of the work that is going on in community action does help people to be more stable and puts them on the path of economic security. Stability is one of our national goals, but it gets very difficult on how you might measure that. And so the work group, tinkered around with some ideas, and what they're doing and what NASCSP is proposing is actually 3 different options that we want the field to give us feedback on. So when the survey is posted Friday, there'll be an opportunity for folks to give feedback about all of the next 3 options that I'm going to talk about. The first option is sort of interesting. The number and % of individuals who achieve 1 or more outcomes as identified by the NPIs in various domains. And the idea here is that we will look at the unduplicated number of people who achieve 1 or more positive outcomes as identified by any of the NPIs across all the domains. So Jenae went over and showed you some of the employment. There's education, there's health, there's social NPIs. And the idea would be if somebody got a positive outcome in any of those, that then we would count that person, that individual once, and that would be the number that would be here. I think the important thing to understand about this stability indicator is that it would not be an aggregated number of all the outcomes or all the NPIs, because we have people who certainly get multiple positive outcomes. They may get a job, and they may also get affordable housing. So that individual would only be counted once in this scenario. So this is going to require agencies to keep an unduplicated count of people who achieve 1 or more outcomes. It could also lead to us sort of breaking down and analyzing a little further more data about how many outcomes do people actually achieve, and do we have a lot of people that achieve multiple outcomes. Now, with all 3 of these options, this first one and the other 2 options that I'm going to highlight, these are proposals, and what we really want is feedback about why these would work, why they wouldn't, how they might be useful locally. We can think sort of how they might be useful nationally, and certainly want state feedback about how a state might use them. On the second option, this is about sort of sustained impact. So you might create stability through sustaining over a 6-month period your basic needs. So the measure here is the number and percentage of individuals engaged with the community action agency who achieved and maintained for 6 months the ability to meet basic needs. And then we've got some sub-measures there about achieving and maintaining for 6 months the ability to meet basic needs, and that would be during the initial year and then in subsequent years. And then we have some definitions for this stability indicator about what does it mean to be engaged. Individuals would include both program participants and all the members of a household, and so in this measure you would get more scale of impact because you would be measuring families or households in this case. And then we'd work on defining, having tools to assess ability to meet basic needs. These might be tools that come from other places that validate meeting housing needs, food needs, or energy and security scales, that kind of thing. And then finally, the third option is the number and percentage of individuals engaged with the Community Action Agency who report improved financial well-being. And this measure is being proposed and really built around some work that the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau is doing around financial well-being scales. And a lot of the agencies and associations, I think, are engaged with CFPB around their financial capability work. And you may have seen that they've done some very solid, well-researched, well-validated work about what does it mean to achieve financial well-being. They've tested 5 survey questions that are listed on this slide that you can quickly ask any individual. There's actually, I think, 10. You can do 5 or 10, and you can very quickly get a score for an individual about financial well-being. So in this stability measure indicator, we could do some pre and post scaling of folks potentially, and without a lot of effort, as we might need in some other options. So definitely want to have folks look at that and give us feedback about what they like and don't like about those 3 options. Okay, and with that, I'm going to hand it back over to Barbara for civic engagement and community involvement.
So just like we look at other family level indicators, we're looking now at civic engagement, that domain of civic engagement and community involvement as a family level indicator. The agency will be looking at its own participants, its customers. So this is the case where participants are gaining a skill. They're participating in a leadership development training program or board development. And so you're able to actually count the number of people who have gained a skill, which is a family level, individual level outcome. And so it relates to community, civic engagement and community involvement. We know that this kind of activity increases social networks, and we know that that helps people move out of poverty, that increase social networks. So we want to make sure that we have a way to capture that. So the NPIs that are related to this level are about the number of program participants who have increased skills, knowledge, ability, and resources that enable them to work with the community action to improve conditions in their community. So this is a little switch on the one that I talked about earlier, where you're looking at the movement towards the change in the condition and what is the change in the condition. And in this one, you're finding out how many people increase their skills in order to enable them to do that. And so one of the key pieces of being able to move out of poverty is improving your leadership skills. So there's a question, there's an NPI that specifically asks about the program participants who improve their leadership skills and then become engaged in a leadership role in the community. There's also an NPI about tracking program participants who improve their social networks, their ability to engage in community activities. So those are the NPIs that are related to civic engagement and community involvement domain at the family and individual level. I know when Denise talked a little bit about the theory of change, and you saw the goals there, there was a question about there's not an agency capacity goal anymore. So where is that found? So on the we've looked at how we can assure that there still remains a focus on agency capacity. We know that we're concerned with organizational standards and other kinds of issues at that level, at the agency level. And so we figured we would find a way to talk about that. So in Survey 4, you'll be able to respond to some things that say, does this focus, does the reporting of the CSBG expenditures and the agency capacity, as you'll see in a minute, does this really help to talk about the agency level capacity development? And so look at these two documents. There are two reports, the CSBG expenditure and agency capacity, and also the resources document. So in the CSBG, you'll recognize this as the old Section E, where we're saying what is the amount of CSBG funding that was expended, that was spent in these different domains. And you'll see some changes in the language. Self-sufficiency has been removed and has been replaced with coordinated service delivery, as that is better captures what has been reported in that area. These are all about self-sufficiency on some level, so to call that out as specifically self-sufficiency was confusing. We've added agency capacity here, and so that it shows this is one of the areas that we're expecting CSBG expenditures in agency capacity. It's not a national goal of ours to promote our own agency capacity, but we need to have our agency capacity supported in order to move forward. And then we've included administration in the above. The next table asks to further clarify some of the details about agency capacity. That first table was about dollars, how many dollars were spent. This table is just about clarifying some of the things that happened that built agency capacity around community needs assessment, strategic planning, data management, training and technical assistance, and other. And the other box will have an opportunity for entry, so that we can start to look at the kinds of CSBG expenditures that have gone into these specific areas of agency capacity development. So it shows that we still have a focus on that. And then not having the goal 5, wait, hold up, go back. Not having the goal 5 report, we want to make sure that we capture some of the things that we think that the network has told us they think that are important in agency capacity building, such as training, mentoring, the kinds of support activities that help board members build their capacity, agency staff, and volunteers. And so we want to include that here, and then also the number of staff qualifications that you've been used to reporting on. Okay, now on to the next one, which is about the CSBG resources administered. This will be familiar as Section F. There's one small change, and that's the addition of the number of hours donated by volunteers, and then the number that are program participants who have donated hours. So those are the small changes on that. Okay, so, and I am turning over to Jeannie.
Yeah, I actually think Denise and Jenae and I are all going to do this next section, but I'm happy to sort of kick off. I think, one of the things I think Jenae mentioned is that we've talked a lot in conversation with folks about ROMA Next Generation, really bringing together information about the people served, the services that they receive, and the outcomes that they achieve. And we really are trying to raise the level of commitment that we all have to analyzing all that information and determining what works. So in the last survey that folks will be able to complete, we're calling it Tying It All Together. And that is really about looking at this analysis. And in the example on the next slide, we give, a little bit of outline here about community action achieves these results. So looking at the NPIs, whether they're family or community, for this many individuals, families, and communities. And so all of that information would be found in the demographics by delivering and implementing certain services or strategies. And we showed you the services and strategies list. And then we're also adding in how much resources, expenditures that are generated by the network. So in that, we can tell the whole story, and we have a lot of information for locals to analyze, for states to look at, to figure out what works, and then for us to use here at the national level to talk about the program and make sure that folks understand what the Community Services Block Grant looks like. So.
Well, I think today's audience is probably one of the folks on this call. This slide, I hope, resonates, right? At the state office, in your annual report, you want to be telling the story. You want to be telling the story to your colleague state agencies that you're working with in partnership. At the state association and RPIC level, this is the story you're bringing to your elected officials, to your board members, to your donors in your state, to potential foundations, and to others. This is the high-impact story, and I've seen many annual reports that come out of state associations. I know we all kind of struggle. How do we tie the story together? This is why we really wanted this group to be on a call together, to hear what your concerns and questions might be, because we know that you are the ones who are going to be using this in a macro level. How do we roll up information that can at least fill in as many of these blanks as comprehensively as possible? We know it won't be 100%, but what can we do? How far can we move the needle on really saying, what did we achieve? How many folks achieved them, and what kind of resources were used and or leveraged to make those outcomes happen?
We wanted to ensure that we broke through the barrier of people thinking ROMA was just the National Performance Indicators report. It's not. It's results-oriented management accountability, and it is tying together our funding, our individual and family demographics, our services, our strategies, and our outcomes. And so we really did focus on tying it all together in this survey. I do want to say that we will be posting all of the surveys in a PDF form. I'm not sure if we'll have a Word form. We'll try for that, but we do want you to be able to print that out before having to go through the SurveyMonkey, so you can plan and you can really work together in your own state meetings, your RPIC meetings, and see what the questions are and how we're going to be gathering the feedback. So the next steps. We do have our webinar series scheduled. Our website that we have all this information is a living website. We will try not to overwhelm you with notices when things are posted, but we will be sending out updates when we are able to post discussion guides, when the survey links go live. We will be posting all of the webinars on there, the recordings, and the FAQs that we're putting together. The series topics that we are going to be going through is that we had our initial kickoff that anybody can listen to. We had this webinar series, which was geared towards the State CSBG Lead Offices, State Associations, and RPICs. Tomorrow is for our National Certified ROMA Trainers and CCAPs, and we'll be able to, it's going to follow a lot of the same format, but we will dive a little deeper into how you can help message and really get people to understand what we're asking. And then our following week that we have our National Theory of Change and Goals webinar scheduled for March 14th. Our community level work on March 15th, our individual and family level work on March 17th. Now we do have, it's not listed here, we have a dual situation going on March 17th because that is the week of NCAP. So if you are attending NCAP, we hope that you stop by and see us from 11:45 till 2:30 is my memory, 3:30. 11:45 to 3:30, and we'll have room assignments, and it's going to be an informal dialogue where you can come and we'll have stations on all of these different topic points, and we'll be able to walk through and really help you understand how we're putting this all together. So we're excited for that. And then we end our webinar series with March 22nd, tying it all together. So what you can do for us. Messaging. Denise and I were talking yesterday in a meeting, and we were a little woeful that when we could see, when we send out our emails, that we're at like 33% click rate of people going through. I did do data analytics on our website, so we're able to see how many states have gone through. We're not able to see local agencies, but we're able to get kind of a general idea. So we really need your help in getting this message out. The timelines are very tight. We understand that. So we're posting things as quickly as possible. We are available. I have noticed even in during this webinar, I got some messages asking us to present during state and regional meetings, so get on our calendar as soon as possible. We're here to provide that training and technical assistance. The coordination between your state office, your state association, and RPIC is key. That it is really important that you all work together to get this message out and see how is this really going to impact you at the state level, how is it going to impact your region. And then contact NASCSP if you need additional information. We do have a ROMA Next Generation 2016 at gmail.com. We developed this Gmail account because we wanted to ensure that all staff could access it so that we were being responsive. And I will say that as soon as Friday morning hit, we started to get messages. If there's anything not working on the website, that was some of our first messages that we got, let us know and we'll correct it. If you need any additional information, you can always contact us directly, but we also ask that you send it to us through that ROMA Next Generation website. So we are going to be handling some questions next. I'm going to turn it over to Jovita for some housekeeping notes while we go through the list of questions that are provided to you, and we're going to take a little break just internally to figure out how we're going to answer these questions. So Jovita, if you can talk about housekeeping notes.
Sure. Thanks, Jenae. As they're taking time to go through the questions that were received, I would encourage those who are listening in on the webinar to take a moment to digest what was presented and to also begin to send, if you have any additional questions, those through the chat function. Once again, if you do decide to send a question, please make sure you send it to all panelists. And if possible, we'd love for you to include the topic, the slide number that you have a question on, and if you'd like to direct your question to a specific presenter, that would really help us in terms of being able to move through the questions with greater ease and at a quicker rate. Additionally, I just want to emphasize that your review of the components of ROMA Next Generation really is crucial as we move forward. So once again, NASCSP's initial comment period is from March 3rd to April 1st, and that's then going to be followed by the official Office of Management and Budget clearance process. Also want to remind folks that NASCSP has developed surveys for each component that is being presented to you today, and those will serve as the primary method for gathering critical feedback and provide a framework for engaging with the various components that have been overviewed. The surveys will include high-level questions as well as more detailed questions about the data elements. And we're going to send through the chat feature once again where you can access all of the ROMA Next Generation resources. This is the site or the page where all of the living documents will rest. And I think we're ready for Q&A.
Thank you, Jovita. We're going to try to address as many of your questions as possible. And just a note that any questions we do not reference, we will be compiling into a FAQ document to share. Our first question is directed to Jeannie. We are wondering if we are looking at baselines and demographics and longer-term engagements in community, can you talk a little about the purpose of targets? And I believe we're talking about the targets in the NPI.
Right. Well, I think we have targets in both community and family level work. So I think that's important to note, and I'm not sure if the questioner had certain ideas. But on the community level, we know that community level takes a lot of time, that sometimes you can work multiple years on a community project. The NPI reporting form does have a place for targets. It has a place for baselines. And the idea is that you would use the NPI form in the year when you actually are reporting on your results. And in the other years that you might be working towards certain outcomes, you would use the community level work in progress form. And if we're talking about community, I think the example that we have on slide 30 is a good example. We have a baseline established there for jobs created. In this scenario, it's 200. And the target is really how much people in that community action agency think they might be able to increase above that baseline. And then the subsequent numbers are, they actually increased in this scenario by 56. And so they achieved over their target. In family terms, if we're talking about individual level change, if we're talking about the number of people that get jobs, that in that case too, sometimes that takes multiple years. And I think just like agencies have probably been doing under our prior work, your target should be the estimate of the number of people that you expect to achieve during that reporting period. So I'm not sure if I'm getting at the questioners at the crux of it, but from the question, those are some thoughts, some initial thoughts that I have. And certainly, if we're talking about demographics, we have introduced this idea of a baseline report, which is going to reflect how folks look, their demographics, when they first come to community action. So that's more about a baseline of what do folks look like when they come to community action. We're going to have to define what it means to present or enroll or start work with community action, but we certainly understand that that's needed. But we think it's important to be able to talk about what do folks look like before we even start serving them. And so that's some of the idea with that baseline report.
I think it's also really important that we acknowledge the fact that a lot of these outcomes take time, that it could take a year, 2 years. And so that's why we have introduced the idea of baselines and targets, because you're not going to have 100 people who walk in who are homeless. In that year, 100 of them achieve home ownership. It's going to take time to work through that. So that's why we also developed our Community in Progress tool, and that we've given you different levels so that you can show that you're working with individuals and families and you're making impacts, but that the number of people who are coming to our door and then the number of outcomes, they're going to be smaller, and that's okay. So we're trying to make the correlation between those two.
Okay, I think we're ready for our next question. It's related to wages and employment. The question states, one challenge that we run into on the living wage issue is that many of our community action agencies don't pay living wages and can't afford to. They may not be able to be a community leader in this respect. Similarly, if they raised wages, they might have to reduce employment in small rural areas. Community action agencies are sometimes large employers, so sometimes these indicators could work against us. We might be able to focus more on drug or substance abuse instead. So just be aware of the challenge around wages and employment.
And I want to say for this one, we are very aware of that. And we don't only track the living wage jobs, but we wanted to be able to track, of the employment, how many were living wage, because we know it is difficult. We know that in rural areas that they may not be there. It's important to note that living wage is defined by the community, that we're not setting the national living wage because it will be different urban versus rural. And then one thing that we didn't say that I want to reiterate is that the outcomes, the indicators, these are menu options. And so you only track what you're working on and what you're doing. So even though we gave employment as an example, that was just an example to show how the forms work. We're not saying that everybody will be reporting on that.
So, go ahead. Barbara?
But that's just what I was going to say, that not everyone will be engaged in any of the options that we've given. That's true on both the family and the community level. So if living wage is not an issue that you're engaged in, you just wouldn't answer that. You wouldn't speak to that at all. But we found that this was one of the things that came up from work groups across the country that is being done. I think one of the pieces of the question was, will this make us look bad if we don't have a lot of people engaged in it? And I think that's something that we need to consider as we find out, as we get responses, how we look at the material, how we look at the reports, how we use the data at the local level, at the state level, and at the national level. But right now we're saying if you do it, please report on it.
Thanks, Barbara. So I just want to loop back to, this is Jeannie, my comment about community NPIs and my statement that the community NPI report is for you would report on that, use that tool the year you achieved your outcomes. that doesn't mean that we don't expect you to set your outcomes when you begin that work. So if you, in year one, you need to set an outcome about how many housing units you're going to create or how many living wage jobs you're going to create, even if that takes 3 years. So on the community work in progress tool, there is a place to identify your outcome, and you might say, we are in year one, we think it's going to take 3 years, and we're going to have 50 living wage jobs created. And then 3 years down the road, you'll actually report the creation of 50 living wage jobs on the NPI tool. So I hope that makes that more clear.
Okay, our next question is related to how the NPIs and strategies connect. The question is, how do you or where do you attribute NPIs to strategies?
So I'm actually going to be connecting two of our questions because we also have a question on tracking outcomes and data collection systems that will do this. So we don't right now in this process have a way that we're saying that states have to report strategies connected to NPIs or services connected to NPIs. But that is something that we want you to be able to work through at your local level, your community action agency level, at your state process. That you'll hear a lot about bundled services and the two-generation approach. You know, and we know that we have been looking at local agencies who started to do this analysis on their own, and one of the best examples that I use is that they noticed that they had a spike in their employment numbers and they couldn't attribute that, so they went back and they tried to see what was happening for those individuals, and they found that their new transportation program, just even bus tokens, helped secure transportation for people to be able to include and improve on their employment. You know, so those are the kinds of questions that we're asking at the local level, at the state level, and that we want you to be thoughtful at. Anything on me on that?
No, I think that it really is about, we've not laid out an expectation that all the types of analysis would get rolled up to state and federal. It wouldn't have any meaning. But to begin to have a system that allows for local analysis is I think, what we're talking about. And we're in the early stages here. We know this is going to stretch folks, but as I said in my initial comments, I think as a network, we can, you know, we can help each other to get to a new place.
Which gets us to our vendors and tracking systems. NASCSP has remained silent on endorsing any vendors, but we do know, and we have done peer-to-peer requests, and we're going to be doing an updated one on what are the current systems that states are using, that regions are using. And we have already been asked that by one of our states, and we're able to share that information. Now, we can't verify whether or not they can do all of this, but we're sharing all of these data points with them so that anybody who is a vendor should be paying attention and start building this process in.
Okay, our next questions are related to the stability indicator options. The first question states, achievement of one or more outcomes seems like an area that would work if there were a more structured selection of combination of services viewed as stability support. And as an example, we're thinking about employment, transportation, and child care would move you toward possibly permanent housing.
I think that's just exactly the kind of comment and feedback we're looking for. So I would really encourage that questioner to put that feedback into the survey when it opens up. If folks have particular ideas about how to make any of those three options stronger, give them to us. Tell us if you like one option over another, if you think another option is really bad. Our goal there was to lay out three possibilities, and we're really just trying to see what the field thinks about each. And then when we get the comments back at the end of the first 30 days, we'll analyze those with the ROMA Next Gen Working Group and figure out which ones, if any, or which one in particular makes sense. So that's a great example of what we're looking for here and how we need states and state associations to help us generate that kind of discussion and that kind of feedback. You can see even from just a few questions that we're getting right here, people have lots of questions about what all this means, and we're going to really need to encourage people to dig in, make comments, send in on the survey. This doesn't make sense. What do you mean by this? And certainly reach out to NASCSP if there are questions about something.
Okay, the next stability indicator related question is, are these ways to measure everything we are collecting? I don't understand what the options apply to.
So I would just say that the goal there was really to find an indicator, some way to cut across NPIs, or you might say to bring NPIs together potentially, or outcomes or results. We all know that many of our clients achieve multiple outcomes, and that moves them towards a more stable situation. But how do we talk about that? How do we measure that? And so that's really what the effort is. It's not a way to measure everything we're collecting. It's a way to talk about the way we change lives. How does community action change lives? And is there a better way than just talking about the individual outcomes? Is there another way that we can bring that together? And that's what those 3 stability measures are trying to get at. But as you know, we don't have the silver bullet. If this had been figured out, you know, many different programs and funding sources would be using it. So it's a work in progress.
Now we'll turn our direction to the characteristics reports on individuals and households. We have a question related to this. I'm not clear on the funding that is now included here. All funding was solely reported in Form E and F. What exactly is being reported in the baseline characteristics report, and then again in the all characteristics report?
So we're not asking for funding levels here. What we're asking for is we have a new category, the work status of individuals. So we ask how many individuals were employed full-time, part-time, migrant seasonal farm worker, unemployed, or retired. And then for the household demographics, we talk about what are their sources of their household income. So how many households had income from employment only, how many had employment in other sources, how many had non-cash benefits, and then we describe what those sources are. So the income sources of these households, under question 15, we go through TANF, we go through private disability insurance, retirement from Social Security, pension, child support. So those are the income sources, and then we have the non-cash benefits. And we talk about SNAP, WIC, LIHEAP here. We wanted to include this to broaden our understanding on what our individuals and household structures look like, what services they were receiving, and what their employment and their household demographic information around income was. So again,
Jenae, I think that it's also she also was asking about the question at the top of that form. If you look on slide 44 at the top of the page, it says total non-CSBG resources and total CSBG funds.
Oh, yeah, sure. So that is just going to be carried over from the other reports. You don't do any data entry on there. And as I said, this is a reporting form. We found that this was an incredibly important tool for people to have as a report. So it's your local agency. If you got a call on Friday at 5 p.m. to say what happened in your agency for your year, if you had this report printed out, you would be able to say what your CSBG resources were, what were your total resources, and then get into some individual and household demographic information. So it's not a data entry. It's going to be something that's pulled from other reports.
So we have a question on, the question is, considering the proposed goals, there appears to be a de-emphasis of the agency focus area of the previous goals on family, agency, and community. Are agencies expected to manage their own self-sufficiency or readiness through the performance management model? How do agencies improve? That would be under current goals 4 and 5 as to opposed to conform. And I'm reading this question because I think this is a really important question for the leaders in states and state associations to be prepared for. So I just wanted to talk about it for a minute. I would use the theory of change to think about the answer and the concepts in this question. So yes, we used to have some goals about increasing agency capacity and partnerships. But when we began to think about what are the real goals of community action, you know, the goals in the end, the reason that you have agency capacity is to achieve those 3 goals at the top, okay? And definitely the performance management piece is there to reflect that you do have to have agencies with capacity. And in that performance management piece, you will find results-oriented management, the organizational standards, the state and federal accountability measures, as well as just the overall result, ROMA, as accountability and management. And so the concept of having strong agencies is certainly represented and important. But in the end, the only reason you have a strong agency is to achieve results for people and communities. And so if this is sort of the reflection of who community action, what community action is, we want to be sure that we say to the world, our main goals are to make the world better for people and communities. We know we have to have strong agencies to do that. And so then the other piece that we've tried to build into agency capacity is on how an agency uses its CSBG dollars and CSBG expenditures. And I think Barbara highlighted the slide that has the CSBG expenditure information, and there are some new pieces on that form that is required of every agency to reflect how they're investing in agency capacity. Are they investing in their board? Are they doing CCAP training? Are they doing ROMA certification? Are they using CSBG to conduct their community needs assessment and strategic planning? And all those things that build a healthy, strong agency. That's what CSBG money should be used for. We have a place for that to be talked about and reported. And so I hope that nobody does feel like we're de-emphasizing agency capacity. And if needed, we can talk about that more with folks. But just you as leaders, I hope you'll kind of get a sense of that's what their the beginning thinking is. And if there's ways to strengthen that, that's what the initial feedback period is for.
So we have a question that I'm going to combine two more questions again because we're short on time. So the question is it preferred to have all feedback come through the surveys versus written comments? It's preferred to have the feedback come through the surveys because we are allowing for written comments in the surveys. So we are going to have the surveys where you're going to be rating information, but we'll also give you specific areas for you to identify what your questions, concerns, comments are in the surveys. And then also, we anticipate to have the discussion guides ready this week and posted this week for you to be able to have the conversations at your state level. So we will let you know when those are all posted live. So we are out of time. I will say that we did receive some additional questions that we have, and so we will be answering those questions and posting them on our website as well. So look for additional information. We appreciate all of you who were able to be on this webinar with us. We had almost 300 attendees. This webinar recording will be posted to the website so you can share with others. Jeannie, do you want to say anything?
No, I know that folks have been waiting for a while to see the ROMA Next Generation, so I hope folks are as excited about this as we are here. I think this is a big milestone for this network, and I'm confident that as this network always does, it will pick up the baton that we really have passed out to the field and do some really great things with it. So let us know if you need help. Let's all be positive and energetic and moving forward with this and do everything we can to make this, the best part of our performance management framework yet. So thank you.
Thanks, everyone.